Welcome back to my channel and another color grading tutorial. Let's create a simple, clean Kodak 2383 look with Dehancer Pro. This footage was provided to me by Khan, who is a photographer and a videographer. He's also a YouTuber. You can check out his links in the description of this video. Thank you, Khan, for sending me this footage. And if you're interested in me color grading your footage in future tutorials, follow me on Instagram and message me and we'll set it up. Let's go ahead and start with the tutorial. The first thing we're going to set up is our node tree. If you've seen some of my previous tutorials, you've seen how sort of big my node trees can get when I'm trying to have a little bit more control over things. But this node tree is going to be a little simple. So I have this node here, which I will rename IDT, which stands for Input Device Transform. In this node here, we're going to take our original camera footage, which was shot on a Sony a7S III and S-Log3, and we're going to convert it into our working color space, which is going to be DaVinci Wide Gamut. In this next node, we're going to adjust our primaries. Then we're going to add a node for skin tones. After that, we'll add a node where we're going to add the 2383 look via Dehancer. Then we'll create a node to adjust our look a little bit. And then I'm going to create a parallel node. I'll rename this film grain and halation. After that, I'll create one more node, and this is going to be our output device transform, where we're going to transform our DaVinci Wide Gamut working color space into Rec. 709. I'll go ahead and clean up the node graph, and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and set up our IDT and ODT. So I'm going to go into the first node, and I'm going to drag in the color space transform tool, and then I'll do the same for the ODT node. In the IDT node, I'm going to input my camera information, which in this case is S-Log3. And then our output color space and our output gamma, I'm going to set to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. This is going to set all of these nodes here in between our IDT and ODT nodes to be working in that DaVinci Wide Gamut color space. Now here in my ODT node, my input color space will be DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate, and then our output color space is going to be Rec. 709 and then Gamma at 2.4. And now you can see that we have a good, decent conversion going on in our shot. Now that I've done this, I'm going to go into my primaries and just adjust my white balance a little bit. And the way that I'm going to do that is by going into the HDR global wheel. If I look over on my vectorscope, I can see that my footage is a little green, a little yellow. So I'm going to grab my temperature and tint controls here on the side and adjust my white balance. You can also do it over here. These are essentially the same controls. If I go before and after, it's just a slight tweak. Maybe I'll add a little bit more magenta and a little bit more blue. And that's good there. If I hit before and after, you can see that we're just balancing the shot just a little bit, getting those skin tones more into a natural flesh tone. For now, I'm going to leave the saturation and the contrast as it is because I want to adjust this after I apply the 2383 look. Now let's go ahead and apply Dehancer. Dehancer Pro is a third-party film emulation plugin that you can use in DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, After Effects, and they also have plugins for Photoshop and Lightroom. And it's one of the, if not the best, plugin for creating realistic film emulations. Dehancer Pro comes with a large library of negative film stocks, which you can use to create just endless amounts of looks. And for this tutorial, we're not going to be using a negative film stock, we're just going to be using a Kodak 2383 film print to achieve a clean and simple look for our footage. I'm going to disable the film grain so I can see my footage a little better. Now let's go into the print controls, and on the profile, let's set it to Kodak 2383 print film. Whenever I'm using Dehancer Pro for this look, I like to grab the color density and bring it all the way up. And now you can see that we're getting that Kodak 2383 color applied to our shot. So back in the primaries node, I'm going to go over to our primaries panel. I'm going to grab the highlights control and I'm going to bring it all the way down. I'm going to do this to get a smooth roll off in the highlights, as well as bring back all this detail up here in the trees. It's also going to add a film compression effect to our footage and help towards creating a little bit more of a filmic look. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back into the HDR wheels and I'm going to adjust my white balance again. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that there. If I go over to my vector scope and we just take a second to analyze what we have so far, we can see that our footage is working here in this top left quadrant. We've got a warm analogous color scheme going on. An analogous color scheme basically means you have colors that are right next to each other on the color wheel. In this case, we have our flesh tones, we have some orange, some yellow, and a little bit of greens. And I'm going to use these colors that are already in the shot to inform me and to influence my decision into what colors I'm going to add into the shot. So now that I know I'm working with yellows, with greens, and with sort of some reddish orange colors, I'm going to go back into Dehancer, and then I'm going to go over to the color head. The color head is a great way to apply color to your shot. It sort of resembles the old traditional method, which involves different color filters. And for a long time, it was the way that color grading was done. So again, I know that I'm working with yellow, with green, and with red. So now I'm gonna grab these three controls and play around with them and balance them around until I get a result that I like. As I'm making these adjustments, I'm not gonna worry too much about our skin tones, as I'll show you in a second how we can bring those back and really make the image pop. I'm just gonna be focusing on these trees here, everything in the background to sort of accentuate them, but also create a little bit more color separation. So I'm gonna grab this, I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow, then I'll go down to the green, and I'll add some green. Then I'll go over to the cyan control. And we add a little bit of red. And if I enable that and disable that, you can see how we're adding some color to the shot, but we're not really doing too much. It's a little subtle, but it's going a long way towards just working well with the colors that are already in our shot. You know, if we wanted to, we could create a sort of analogous complementary color scheme and add some sort of cyan blue. We could also maybe add some red or some more green to widen the analogous color scheme. But I like that we're mostly working in this top left quadrant. Again, we're not trying to sort of change the scene or change the mood of the scene. We're going with whatever are the natural colors in our scene. I'm going to close the color head. I'm going to come up here to the Film Developer tool, which is a new section in the Dehancer plugin, which allows you to adjust contrast, gamma correction, color separation, and color boost. I'm going to come down here to the color boost and decrease it just a little bit. For this adjustment here, I'm focusing on her skin tones and getting them to a saturation that I like, which is right around here. Okay, now that I've done that, we have our basic look going on. If I do it before and after, you can see the change that has gone on with our color grade. Some of the well-known characteristics of the Kodak 2383 print film are its neutral highlights and its neutral shadows. And the HDR wheels inside of DaVinci Resolve give us a very simple way to do this. So we're gonna go over to the look adjustment node, and in our HDR wheels, we're gonna come over to the specular wheel, come down to its saturation and set it to 0, which is the lowest value that this control can go. And I'm gonna zoom in here on these trees. And if I disable the node, you can see what we're doing. We're grabbing the brightest parts of our image and we're desaturating them so they are truly white. And while you can, as a creative choice, as a stylistic choice, hide a little bit of color in your highlights, and it is something that I do a lot, for this look, I'm gonna go ahead and neutralize them and keep them pure white. And doing this helps to add some neutrals in the shot, which then helps whatever color adjustment you're adding to your shot to sort of stand out a little bit more. Now I'm gonna try and do it as much as I can for the shadows. This is a sort of bright scene, so there's not really any true black going on here, but I do wanna desaturate the darkest parts just a little bit. So I'm gonna zoom in here to these trees. I'm gonna go over to my black color wheel. I'll desaturate it by setting the saturation to 0. And if I hit before and after, you can see that there's not much going on, but I can adjust the range in which this black HDR wheel is working. You can do that here, or if you want a visual representation of the areas you're affecting with a histogram, you can go over to the zone graph here. This slider here and this area here is what this color wheel will be affecting. And you can see that it's not really affecting too much here. But if I grab it and drag it to the right, I'll start to affect more of the shot, and you can see that happening here with these trees. And I just want to desaturate just the absolute darkest parts. It's going to be very subtle, but the eye is going to subconsciously pick it up. If I do a before and after, it's a very subtle change, but it can go a long way into helping not just the color that you've added to your shot pop out, but also create a more realistic scene if it is that you're creating a sort of crazy color grade. In this case, we're not, but try it out with other color grades and you might find that it's the key to make certain color grades work that weren't working for you in the past. And with that being said, there's one more thing that you can always do to make your color grade look more natural, more believable, and that's by neutralizing your skin tones. The skin tones aren't too far away from where I would like them to be, so we'll go over to the skin tones node. We'll go over to the hue versus hue curve, and if you are color grading 8-bit footage, I recommend you use this method. On the hue versus hue curve, or any of these curve adjustments, the skin tone basically sits right here in the middle of yellow and red. So what you can do is activate these red anchors, click right here in the middle, and then drag up and down to adjust the skin tones. If you're working in these curves panels and you don't see the histogram in the background, you can go over to this menu here, go to histograms, and then activate output. And then you'll see the histogram moving around as you make adjustments. While I'm making the adjustment, I'm going to be looking at my skin tones as well as the vectorscope, making sure that I'm lining it up closer with the skin tone indicator line. And I'm liking this right here. If you've noticed, we also affected the leaves here. I'll do a before and after and you can see that. But I'm liking the color separation that it added and the widening of our analogous color scheme. So I'm gonna leave that there. What I might also do is go over to the hue versus luminance curves and bring down the luminance of our orange tones, which will add a little bit of density to our orange hues and create a more filmic look. You definitely want to be careful and be conservative when working with the hue versus luminance curve because it can very easily start to add some weird color artifacts to your footage and you don't want that. I'm liking that right there. I'm also going to go over to the hue versus saturation curve and bring down the saturation just a little bit. Right there, not too much. If I toggle the node on and off, you can see what a big difference this is and how much more our subject here stands out and looks just much more natural. The last thing I'll do is add some film grain and some halation. So I'm gonna go over to my film grain node and I'm gonna load in the DaVinci Resolve film grain OFX. And I'm gonna go over to the film grain presets and set it to 16mm 50D since this is an outdoor scene. These presets are pretty decent. I'm just gonna go over to the grain strength and increase it a little bit. So I'll leave that there. After that, I'm gonna add some halation. So again, I'll load in the halation OFX that DaVinci Resolve comes with. My processing color space, I'll set it to DaVinci Wide Gamut. And the first thing I'm gonna do is check view isolated regions so I can see what areas are being affected. And I'll grab the threshold and bring it all the way down. In most cases, to make sure you're adjusting just the edges in your shot, you want to grab the threshold and bring it to 1. After that, I'll go over to view glow alone to actually see our glow. And now I'll play around with the reduce highlights control. I'm liking that there for now. I'll uncheck this. Now I'm gonna zoom into our subject's head and this area here so I can see how the halation is affecting my subject and the trees. And I'm gonna bring the strength down a lot and increase the spread to make it just a little bit softer. Now I'll go back to the strength and just play around with that until I'm getting something that I like. If I do it before and after, we can see how the halation is working on our subject's clothes, on the edges of these tree branches and leaves, as well as on our subject's head. And I'm liking that, but I think it's a little too saturated, so I'm gonna grab the saturation and I'm gonna bring it down a bit. And from there, I might increase the strength just a little bit. And there you go. I'm trying to keep it as subtle as possible. Don't want it to stand out too much for this shot. And that's how you can apply a clean, basic Kodak 2383 look. And using this method where you stick to the natural color scheme that's already in your shot is a great way to create a clean, natural looking color grade while still having some style because you are working in that beautiful 2383 color science. If you've been looking into getting Dehancer, or this is your first time seeing Dehancer and you're interested in getting it, you can use the code George to get a 10% discount. I will see you in the next color grading tutorial. Thank you for watching.